Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is completely disassemble this axle housing, take off the drive shaft from here and right here. It's just that one little screw right there. Yeah, just like that. So drive shaft part 1, and then we're gonna remove this diff cover. So here you can see I removed the diff cover from the axle. One thing to keep in mind is that these screws, the ones that are in the top 2 holes, are way longer than the other screws for the 4 on the bottom. Just keep that in mind when organizing screws. So here I'm going to remove this worm gear, the 2 bearings in here, this gear, and the ball bearing right here. And then also the drive shafts and bearings on the end. That drive shaft in the middle right there. So I do recommend using gloves for this when you're dealing with the insides of this part right here. But we're going to remove this worm gear right here. See that bearing attached on the end. This gear should... Oh, we got to take these off first. Alright, so it's just those 2 screws on the end. Let's disconnect this bearing. Same for the other side. So I'm going to remove these 2 screws. Here you can see I have those 2 screws removed on both sides. So now this should just pull straight out. There's one part. And the other part. Oh. Yeah, perfect. And then you want to make sure you get those bearings as well inside. Completely empty. So now we have the full rear axle housing and all of the internal components removed apart. I'll get this bearing out in a second. So now we're going to swap it over to the rear CCxRC full brass axle. Complete brass axles, front and rear, and then comes with your CCxRC branded black colored brass diff covers. And it comes with all the screws and Allen wrenches that you may need to install. I mean, wow, look at the quality.
That's what I'm talking about.
Full brass. I love the black colored brass right here, and the CCxRC branding looks very good. So let's actually go ahead and weigh these. So the rear axle alone is 27 grams. With 1 diff cover, it's going to bring it up to 35. 1 diff cover is going to be 8 grams. So we'll go ahead and add all of it. So in total, 65 grams for all of this. As you guys can see, exactly the same size from stock to upgraded. So everything should go right back into there very nicely. And for anyone with questions, the diff covers are completely the same. There's no front or rear, so it doesn't make any difference. So I'm going to go ahead and install this bearing into the diff cover. So now for the rear, I'm going to go ahead and install the bearings back into the sides. Just like that. Now we have those bearings in there. We'll go ahead and put this disc in like so. Install your drive cups into the ends. Make sure you feel them click into the center disc. I guess gear, not disc. Now I have both sides installed. It was very hard. I had to go off camera to get the perfect lining for inside right here. It's very hard to do, but it's possible. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the screws on the ends of here to hold this bearing into place. And this kit, this upgrade axle kit, does come with all of your screws, and they're all silver to give that extra bling, so that's really nice. And the Allen keys in case you don't have your tools. So I'm going to install these new ones onto here and make sure they're the right length. They should be the shortest ones. Just 2 screws, the shortest ones that come in the package, on both sides to secure these bearings in the axle housing. I'm really liking the silver screws other than the black ones. So now we'll install the worm gear. Make sure the ball bearing is on the outside, so going towards outside. Then we'll install the diff cover. Make sure that bearing is also inside right there. Push that all the way. Put that on there just like that. And then screw it down. Okay, so there's something I just did miss. So on the stock axle housing, you are gonna have to take off this top piece right here. It screws on through the diff cover, but this little plastic piece you do need. And this is gonna go on when you install your diff cover right here. It's gonna put threads through right here, just like that. So you slide that plastic piece on there, right on the top. Make sure that's snug. And then you put your long screws in the top, the 2 up here, and then 4 medium-sized screws in the bottom. So guys, we've ran into some big issues. When I was installing the diff cover, I realized you do need that plastic piece. Where'd it go? So you need that plastic piece. It needs to be facing this way, and it goes right here. So the links can connect right there for the rear. And these screws that it comes with are not long enough to reach the threads. So they just kind of go in and they just stick in. They don't go to the threads. So this can't really stay on. So one, you need longer screws, which we luckily have. That way they can reach to these threads back here. And 2, when I was installing the bottom screws, I accidentally used a longer screw when you're supposed to use the medium sized, and I snapped off the end of a screw, and now it is stuck in there. So now I'm only going to be able to use 3 screws to screw on the bottom, which is manageable, but you're only going to have 3 screws, and it's gonna look weird, which ultimately I'm fine with. It's not that big of a deal, but I am kind of mad at myself for it because I messed it up. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and install this diff cover and show you guys. Rear axle all finished. As you can see, only 3 screws for the bottom, but you know, it's whatever. My mistake. So just be careful of that. Make sure you're installing the shorter screws for the ones down here, and maybe get some longer screws for the ones up top. Now we will move on to the front axle. I'm going to go ahead and show you removing all of this part and the steering knuckles to get to the axle. Alright, so we're going to detach the servo horn. Remove the servo. Just like that. Now we're going to remove the steering links and the 2 steering knuckles. Steering link's is going to be this screw and this screw. Steering knuckles will be the bottom screw right here and top screw, and same with the other side. So when you're taking off the steering knuckle, when you take it off, you're going to see this drive cup right here. That's going to attach to this little screw. Well, pin, not screw. So when you're reinstalling, make sure that cup lines up with the pin. But then take this out of the steering knuckle. So now I have both steering knuckles and the steering links removed. Now I'm going to remove the drive shaft right here and the servo mount. The drive shaft for the front is going to be exactly like the rear. It's the one screw, just like that. Okay, so now I'm going to remove this diff cover. The top two screws will remove the servo mount, and the 4 will remove the whole thing. So now I have all the screws removed from the diff cover and servo mount, so I'll just take that off and remove the diff cover, revealing the ball bearing and all the same components as the rear. Pull the worm gear out. Take that out. Fully disassembled front axle. So one thing that you can't miss is, I don't know if you can see, but there is bearings inside of here, and you're going to want to take those out on both sides if they don't already come out with the axle. These right here. I'm gonna work on trying to get those out, and then I'll bring it back. So now I have those bearings removed. You can see straight down. So now it's fully disassembled. And then these were the two bearings right there. Do not forget those. Very important. In case you're wondering where those bearings do go, you just slide them back through right here and right there. Back in here. Perfect fit. Nice. Okay, so instead of using the stock front gears, I'm going to be installing the CCxRC, I believe 23% overdrive gears for the front. That way the wheels spin a little bit faster, giving me increased incline, climbability, and a better turning radius. So this is what comes in the package. This is your gear for the middle, and then your worm gear, and this is the most very important part, this little O-ring right here. If you look on the stock one, you'll see that there's an O-ring right there. That's where that O-ring is going to need to go. And then make sure to transfer your bearing that was on this end to the new one. Here's the O-ring right here. I just slipped it on there. And that's very, very important, guys. Make sure you put that O-ring on there. So yeah, right there, your O-ring. And on the other end is your bearing. That's how you're going to want to do that. Alright, so installing these bearings right here, they're going to go right there and right there, just like the rear. Alright, so I got those bearings in there and put in the one circular gear right there. It's a 213 tooth, by the way, in case you were wondering. I'm going to install the worm gear, make sure the bearing is outwards. Stab it on there. sure it's nice and oiled. Well, greased. Alright, so now that's all greased up, we're gonna reinstall like so. Okay, so I got those two stub axles inside, connected, it's all linked up, all turns nicely, functioning great. So now I'm gonna install the diff cover, show you what that looks like. I'm actually going to install the brass servo mount as well. So here's the CCxRC brass servo mount. I'm gonna go ahead and weigh it in grams. 7 grams. Okay guys, after a lot of trial and effort, here it is, the front axle housing and servo mount. So what I did was install the overdrive gears inside, replaced the axle housing with brass. The diff cover is obviously brass, and since these top two screws were not long enough, I put them in the back where the threads are, and this way they're holding the servo mount on and I don't have to go out and get more long screws. So that's a little DIY. You can put them through the back. I'm gonna guess you can do the same for the back axle as well. You can put the screws in right there if you want. It's not a big difference besides the fact that the screws will not show in the front. But I figured since the steering links and servo will be blocking it, it won't really make a big difference. So I just went ahead and did that. Tell me what you think about this servo mount, but I think it looks amazing with all this brass. Okay, wow, 90 grams. So I don't know if it was the gears or all the little mechanisms and bearings and screws that made a big difference, but oh, 91. Okay, so it went from 65 grams I believe to 91 grams, and this weight is all down low. It's gonna be all down low. Next video we'll be installing these, the steel drive shafts and the high clearance links. So make sure you leave a like on this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next few videos coming up. Guys, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let's see if we can get this video to 25 likes. I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one. Stay tuned.